You're listening to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for and by Rockies fans on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Thank you for joining us as we discuss all things baseball and Colorado Rockies.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Rocky Mountain Rooftop Network, a proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Skyler Timmons, joined here once again. You'll never guess what team he's supporting in the playoffs. If you're watching the video version, it's Evan Lang.
I feel like even if you're not watching the video version, it'd be pretty easy to guess. I feel like I've made my allegiances fairly clear. It's definitely the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Well, yeah, you'd be a fool not to root for them.
I certainly don't hope the entire state of California breaks off and sinks into the sea to avoid the Dodgers winning another World Series.
We'll see, but we'll talk playoffs a little bit more later on in the show. But we've got plenty to talk about in this one, Evan. But first and foremost, we have to get our little Avalanche hockey podcast out of the way. Go Avs, go!
Yeah, 5-0-1 to start the season. The power play is absolute garbage, but just imagine how good this team would be / will be if / when the power play actually starts working. Because defensively, they've been great. Even strength, they've been great. Goaltending by Scott Wedgwood has been fantastic. He has been about as good as you needed him to be, with Mackenzie Blackwood on the injured list, or he's returned or getting ready to return at time of recording, but not having started a game yet this season, and with Trent Miner as the backup, who I don't know if you really trust at this point because he's largely only done AHL games. The team's been firing on pretty much all cylinders except for the power play.
Which, man.
And I really just want them to get the reveal for their new uniform out of the way, because I feel like they're teasing it a little bit every day, and we're like, oh, is tonight the night? And then it's not. Just give it to us already. Please.
Just do it.
But
don't let your dreams be dreams.
Avs are doing good. The Denver Nuggets start play this coming week, the week of when this episode airs. The Denver Broncos are somehow 4-2, despite playing one of the worst games of football I've ever watched last week. And the offense is off to a rough start against the New York Giants at time of recording. But we celebrate the late, great Demaryius Thomas being inducted into the Broncos Ring of Fame. And then we have plenty of Rockies stuff to talk about. So an interesting week for Colorado sports.
And while the other teams are playing games, the Rockies are trying to figure out their future. And so we're going to...
How to stop losing as many.
Yes, stop trying to figure out how to lose so many games. But we talked about, as we talked about last week, the front office is in flux. They're still trying to figure out who's going to be in charge of this whole operation. And they're usually pretty tight-lipped about who they've talked to and who's doing what and what's going on. But The Athletic had some sources leak out a couple of names that have popped out, and we'll certainly dive into them more maybe later on about if these are the right types of people you want to talk about. But so far we've learned it's James Click, Matt Forman, I forget
and
the name. Scott
Sharp. So James Click, who is the assistant, who is an assistant and executive for the Toronto Blue Jays. Scott Sharp, who is an assistant general manager and executive for the Kansas City Royals. And Matt Forman, in one of the 3, I think, assistant general managers for the Cleveland Guardians.
Yeah. So they've got these 3 that they've interviewed. No word if there's been any more beyond that. The Rockies have been pretty tight-lipped about it, which I guess is whatever. But, Evan, we'll dive into it more maybe a little bit later on. But just initially, just seeing some names that have popped up. What sticks out to you about these candidates that the Rockies have gone after thus far?
Big thing for me is that all three candidates that have been named, and like you said, we don't know if there have been more. We don't know if they've interviewed guys like Thad Levine or anybody else. All three are from outside the organization. It continues to sound like Walker Monfort is going to make good on his word that whoever is the next president of baseball operations or GM, whichever one it is, because they actually haven't decided apparently if it's going to be one or the other at this point, which is a whole interesting can of worms that I could spend a while discussing. But so far, we have heard nothing about any aspect of the Rockies talking to anyone from within the Rockies organization for the role. And I think that's reinforced by the what we talked about last week, the resignation of Zach Rosenthal, who would have been a candidate for it. And the other thing that really stands out to me is that all three of them are fairly young-ish in terms of being a baseball executive. Click is the oldest at like 53 years old. The other two are in their 40s. And they are all heavily analytics driven, especially guys like Click and guys like Forman. And Click has spent time with a bunch of different organizations, most notably the Houston Astros, but he's also spent time with the Dodgers. These are guys who are well-traveled, well-educated, and much more modern in terms of running or helping to run a baseball organization.
Yeah, so, and like I said, we'll dive into them a little bit more and just like what they bring to the table. But no, it's here that I don't know. Maybe they'll be in the round of finalists. It sounds like the Rockies are looking to narrow down to the finalists that they've talked to this coming week. So who knows? Evan, by the end of the week, we could, by the time we record next for our next episode, we could know who's in charge of this whole dang thing. But you know, it's Walker making good on that promise. So yeah, we're going outside the organization. We're bringing in different types of guys from around the league, from specifically teams that are in the same realm as the Rockies market-wise. These mid-level, mid-size, small to mid-market teams that can look to maximize their resources and whatnot. And we don't know. Here's the interesting thing too, Evan, is they still haven't decided whoever they hire, what their title is. We just don't know if it's going to be president of baseball ops or a general manager, which is still interesting because it seems like the Rockies still don't know what exactly they're looking for in a sense of what they want that vision to be.
What I'm really wondering is if this ends up actually being a president of baseball operations, and then they go on to hire an additional general manager or assistant GM or something like that, which would be really, really interesting for the Rockies to do. They've been without a PBO since Kelly McGregor passed away, and
even then he wasn't like really a president.
He wasn't like a true PBO. And the fact that we could end up with that situation is really interesting to me, especially on the timeline that we are at. The Rockies said, it's been alleged that the Rockies plan to have this sorted out by the end of the World Series, if not by the beginning of the GM meetings, which are in a couple of weeks. And with it being said that, finalist interviews are happening this week, it really feels like we are on that timeline.
Yeah, and it's moving quick, and we'll see how quickly it goes, but it's going to be interesting. But again, we'll touch more on the GM in a second in the middle of our show. But here's the interesting thing that's also come out of this front office search, Evan. So like I said, we don't know who the president of baseball ops or GM, whatever that's going to be, part of that. But another thing that Walker Monfort has come out and said, because he's the head honcho in this, he's taken point from his dad, like, I'm going to be in charge of this, but that he's looking to create a new position with the Rockies front office, specifically a chief revenue and strategy officer, which the TLDR of it all is basically tasked with looking at the revenue streams and looking to maximize profits. Where are we spending money? How is it being invested back into the team? How can we maximize our profits to bring in more revenue to invest into the team, specifically for analytics and data research, specifically to boost that up. What was your reaction, or what are your thoughts on that, Evan, of just Walker coming out and saying, yeah, this is the position I want to do for that?
Probably the most interesting thing I find about it is that, one, Walker Montfort said and has said in recent interviews that, oh, he and his dad are a team, that they're working together on all of this. But the actions that Walker is taking sure makes it feel like one Dick Montfort is starting to relinquish a little bit of his control over the team. And what stands out the most to me for that is the creation of this position, the Chief Revenue and Strategy Officer, because that has been, well, that's Dick Montfort's job, is to spend the money and sign the checks and decide where all the money goes. We know how meddlesome, how much interference he's ran when it comes to individual player contracts, the Chris Bryant contract, some of the unfortunate trades the Rockies have made, some of the other signings, that had Dick Montfort's fingerprints all over it. And the timing of the idea for this, the Chief Revenue and Strategy Officer, especially when it comes to investing the revenue back into the team, into analytics, into player development, is really interesting, as revenue expenditure has been a topic of conversation recently in baseball circles, because, we'll talk about the Dodgers a little bit later, but everyone's talking about how, oh, well, look at how much the Dodgers maximize their revenue.
Yeah.
How much of their revenue, it's something like 73, 75%, they put back into the baseball team. And that's something that I do agree that, every single team should be investing as much of their revenue as they can into putting a quality product on the field. And for the Rockies, for years, it's been, the Rockies have one of the smallest analytics departments in the league. They have one of the smallest data and research departments in the league. They don't put the resources in for player development.
Mm-hmm.
And if this position is someone that can help that, and I'm hoping that it's Walker Montfort going, I'm bringing in someone who can tell me where the money needs to go.
Yeah.
That is what I want to hear, because I don't want to hear, Dick Montfort or even Walker Montfort, who are not, very well versed when it comes to player development, when it comes to analytics, making those decisions. I want them listening to someone smart who's telling them what decisions to make when it comes to reinvesting their revenue.
Yeah, and because that's always been the biggest thing is, maybe they'll kick away somebody who, you think back to like a Scott Van Linton, if maybe that was going to kind of be, that type of stuff of, okay, this is how we need more stuff in the analytics and research department, because he had an idea about what his role was supposed to be, but it, conflicted with what the team thought his role was supposed to be, and so then he gets fired. So, like you said, it's exactly that. Rockies surround themselves with people who can make the baseball decisions or give them informed decisions, inputs that then Walker and Dick can then sign off on, like, okay, that makes sense, let's do that. Instead of the other way around, where it's saying Dick come in, say, hey, we need to do this, let's go get Chris Bryant. And everybody's like, yes, sir. When a smart...
Let's sign Ian Desmond.
Yeah. Right.
To play first base, even.
Yeah. Let's sign Ian Desmond. I don't think we need him. We have a shortstop. But to play first base. So it's just expanding, I think, the degrees of separation. Where it's been a sense where there hasn't been enough cooks in the kitchen when it comes to making Rockies decisions. And you just need more, a brain trust. And Walker is doing enough for me at the moment, like coming up with an idea like this. Now, do you need to make a specific role for this? Probably not. But if you can delegate this to somebody, create a job for somebody who can focus on that and really zero in on that aspect of the team, that's good in my opinion, especially if it's how can we boost, make our analytics more robust. Because that's really the crux of it all.
And it's funny because, like, you talk about too many cooks in the kitchen. Is like, at this point, the Rockies only had one cook in the kitchen, and he didn't know how to cook.
and the microwave was unplugged.
So we're going out and hiring some actual cooks to run the kitchen. And you do need multiple cooks. You need your main cook and your line cook and your sous chef and all that junk. Yeah. And it feels like And I don't want to put cart before the horse because it's way too early and none of the hires have been made. And it'll be, let's face it, years before this could potentially bear fruit and give us actual results on the field. But it feels like, so far, Walker Monfort is understanding the assignment of open up, become less insular, and modernize.
Yeah.
Stop being an organization that is trapped in an era of baseball 10 years before you even started playing.
Yeah. I do have a concern because when you start hearing somebody about maximizing profits and revenue, as a small to mid-market team, it does give me reason to pause. Like, what does that mean? And is it always going to be a positive thing for a club? Because, honestly, Evan, I don't want to operate like the Tampa Bay Rays do, where it's a constant turnover. Don't get attached to anybody because they're going to get traded away. No, you're good players. You can sign to an extension and then trade them. As soon as you can when they start to become too expensive. Like, I don't want to subscribe to that. It can be a useful tactic at times, but it's not always cookie cutter for every single thing. And that's what I worry about with someone in that capacity. Would they come in like, we got to maximize profits, so we're going to have a cheaper payroll. We're not going to go out and get big guys. We're going to constantly trade, wheel, and deal and all this stuff and ride guys for a couple of years as much as we can and then ship them off when they're just about to get too expensive because they're that good. I worry about that stuff.
And I think that's a reasonable enough worry, and there's a middle ground to be had.
Yeah.
That's the big thing, is finding that middle ground. And, we'll talk about the actual candidates, but I would say that 2 of the 3 candidates that we know of are from organizations where they are still small to mid-market teams with lower payrolls, minus the Toronto Blue Jays who have a pretty large payroll, but have been around the block with organizations who know how to keep the franchise names, keep the butts in the seats, keep people invested without resorting to the wheeling and dealing of an organization like the Tampa Bay Rays. And I think that sort of strategy is not very popular in the league right now. Like, it's largely limited to teams like the Rays. Mm-hmm. And that gives me some hope that the Rockies will not be foolish enough to entertain that same thought.
But it's like you said, you gotta find the middle ground.
Yeah. Where the Rockies have been, at times, often, too loyal to their players, to guys within the organization. But having some loyalty to guys within the organization is still good.
You want to have loyalty to the good players, not the average and mediocre ones. Well, yeah, we love Ryan McMahon. He should not have signed they should not have signed him to an extension when they did. But yeah, you just worry about that stuff. Now, if this revenue officer comes in and is like, hey, why don't we do more promotional things and this and that, and here's how we can bring in more money to the team. Heck yeah, do all that you can. Sponsorships. Bring back an in-game race.
Tooth trot. Bring back the tooth trot.
No, do not bring back the tooth trot, but bring something akin to it.
Bring back the tooth trot.
No. Dinosaurs. Well, the dinosaur walk.
I'd be down for a dinosaur race.
And then do it to the soundtrack from the show Dinosaurs.
But without the ending. If you remember how messed up the ending to the show Dinosaurs was.
Not the mama.
They all died.
Rightfully so, they're dinosaurs.
And it was their own fault.
Mm-hmm.
It was environmental destruction caused by greed and hubris.
That doesn't happen in real life, Evan.
Not at all relatable. What fiction.
Dinosaurs.
But you know what would put a lot more butts in seats and get you some profit? You know what would put me in a seat more often? Bobbleheads. Sure. Give me more bobbleheads.
Mm-hmm. Maximize those profits and revenues, but don't limit those behind the ticket package. Don't try to increase profits that way.
Yeah, like the Los Rockies.
Yeah, that's the thing you just have to worry about whenever you start hearing about maximizing profits and revenue, it's okay. Well, then where? No, are you going to try to reallocate what you already have? Different budgeting. Oh, we're going to increase ticket prices. All this stuff. Those are questions you have concerns about, but we'll see what happens. But Evan, we'll take a quick break. We're going to continue this conversation when we come back and dive more into these candidates and if the Rockies are doing it right. And don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here on Affected by Altitude. Welcome back here to Affected by Altitude. Skyler and Evan here with you, talking episode 184. Evan, can you believe it's been that many?
Yes.
Yes.
And we do this almost every week.
The episode 200 spectacular, whenever that shows up.
In approximately 16 episodes.
Ooh. That's like a couple of months.
Yes.
Yes. But talking about the front office, so we mentioned 3 of the candidates: James Click, Scott Sharp, Matt Forman. Unsure of who else has been interviewed, but Evan, the Denver Post came out with an article, and Patrick Saunders had a couple of excellent articles that have dived into this, and he had one that come out. Matt Holliday talking about it, but then Ryan Spielborgs, and Spilly had a point in there that stuck out to me that I'm sure is a valid concern for a lot of people is, are the Rockies taking the proper time to make the best decision possible for the organization? Because they are under kind of a time crunch with the end of the World Series and free agency starting the day after and all these decisions that they have to make as a front office. They're kind of under the gun here. So, this is a decision that's maybe going to be made a little bit hastily. And you just have to wonder, are they doing it right? Are these candidates we've seen thus far that have been reported, are they doing it right? Are these the right type of people they should be targeting?
My thought on this is, the Rockies, obviously, and we talked about this multiple times throughout the season, the Rockies should have parted ways with Bill Schmidt before the trade deadline, even.
Yeah.
Arguably, he should not have been employed at the start of this season. But they didn't fire him during the season. They waited for him to, quote unquote, resign at the end of the season, like a lot of other teams do. And unfortunately, that does lead to a bit of a time crunch because you've only got so much time before important moves need to be made. The non-tender deadline coming up, Rule 5 protections, the opening of free agency. There's a lot that needs to be done in a short amount of time. But at the same time, I do think that just based on who we know is being interviewed so far, I'm willing to bet that these are candidates the Rockies have had on their radar since at least the start of the second half of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was pretty clear to everyone involved after the trade deadline, after all of that, Patrick Saunders said it repeatedly, multiple other outlets reported on it, that Bill Schmidt was essentially, in terms of his position, a dead man walking. That he was going to be gone at the end of the season, either fired or resigned or reassigned or something. And if the Rockies were smart, and, I know that they haven't done a lot of that recently, but the hope would be that, these are guys who they've had on their radar, they have been thinking about, and it's so difficult because we know how insular the Rockies are. We know how quiet they are. They wear everything so close to the chest. So we really will have no idea. But I think all 3 of these guys, and they're all from organizations who have been doing some interesting things recently, who fit the mold that the Rockies could more easily fit into, and who have had some success. The Guardians aren't perfect, but over the last 2 seasons, they've been putting things together a lot better. The Kansas City Royals had a surprise playoff run last year, and, things didn't really work out this year, but they weren't a bad team.
Yeah.
And the Toronto Blue Jays, the big spenders of the group, but they've also done the things that the Rockies, but it's not just the big name free agents for the Blue Jays. It's also been, and for all 3 of these teams, draft and develop organizations. Mm-hmm. And then they've been supplementing with free agents where they can. And I think that you have to be quick about this. And you have to assume, because the alternative is pretty rough, that the Rockies have been doing their due diligence since July. The Rockies aren't rushing through things, that they've had some ideas on what they wanted to do, at least since Walker Monfort moved into the role.
Yeah, that's a good point. Is okay, maybe it seems a little rushed, but maybe they started this process a while ago and had these conversations with Bill, like, Bill, do what you can, throughout the rest of the season. It's because after the trade deadline, there's not really much a GM can do, since there's no waiver deadline. So, after the trade deadline, there's really no point of the GM anymore. Like, he doesn't do a whole lot aside from making some moves of just roster moves of promotions and demotions, that type of thing. So what does a GM do after the... So, yeah, like, hopefully maybe the Rockies started this process of, they got their dream board set up there in the front office, and, okay, these are the guys that we want to look at and maybe try to target and talk to if we can. Guys that they want to target. And then, I think Spilly put it out too, is, man, I hope that they were also reaching out to people who they thought maybe would never want it, because those are the type of people who exactly want this job. And, because it's just nice to think, okay, this is an ideal dream job for a lot of executives, because it is starting from scratch. And so it's just like, did the Rockies do due diligence and get enough guys opportunities? Because why are these the only three that leaked out? How are the Rockies keeping everything else under wraps? And so you just wonder, like, how many people have interviewed? How many have expressed interest in it? Did the Rockies give everybody the chance, an equal chance, or have they already made up their mind and they're just going through the motions again?
Yeah. And then on the other side of things, it could be that none of these guys end up being the person who's selected for the job.
It's me.
Surprise, everybody.
What would you do if
change the podcasting schedule a little bit, but...
No, we can still do it on Sundays. What would you do if just on Wednesday you just see the announcement, like, Skyler Timmons has been announced as the new general manager of the Colorado Rockies?
Ask for a job?
And I would say, no, you don't work here.
Oh, bummer.
My first move as general manager is to rehire Bill Schmidt.
I'd be pretty unhappy with you.
Just hire him back and then resign and promote him back up to general manager.
Hire back Bud Black.
Yeah. Just do everything. I like the team the way it was. It's like poetry and rhymes. But yeah,
every scene is so dense.
But it's nice to at least see that they're like we mentioned before, living up to the promises. And it's natural for us to have these worries, because I think Patrick Saunders pointed it out too. This is pretty much the most important and impactful decision in Rockies history since maybe the announcement of the team and putting together whoever was going to be the inaugural ones to run the team. This is perhaps even more of a critical junction and decision. And so it's natural that we're going to be a little worried about it.
Yeah, especially at the juncture that it arrives at, where it has been a rough 7 years. The Colorado Rockies are at the single lowest point they have ever been. And there's been some rough seasons before and some rough stretches, but it has never been this bad before.
It made the 2012 season look like the 2007 run.
I have fond memories of the 2012 season.
And you're a fool for it.
And there's not a whole lot of fond memories to have for this year.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always something. Every season, there's always one or two things that you're going to go, that was neat.
Remember when they fired Bud Black? That was neat.
That was neat. I was literally walking to the bus station to go to the airport. But it really is. It is the single lowest point. This is the season. This is the point in time that fans will remember for decades of being the lowest of the low.
Mm-hmm.
And every team has those points. Every franchise who's ever suffered a little bit has those. You had the 48-point season for the Avs. For the Broncos, it's been the revolving door of quarterbacks, mediocrity, and sadness for the last, decade since the end of the Peyton Manning era. For the Nuggets, it was basically the entire late 90s and early 2000s. And, for the Cleveland Browns, it's the entirety of their existence. Hey-oh.
Hey-oh.
But for the Rockies, this is something they need to get right. And I totally understand Philly's trepidation of, oh man, I hope they're taking their time to think about this thoroughly.
Yeah.
And all we can do is assume that they have.
Yeah. And I hate to say, but like, we have to put our trust in Walker Montfort. The irony that Walker Montfort has to be the savior of the Rockies.
Don't like that.
Yeah. But like we've talked about with Walker, like at least he's hopefully had his eyes opened of like, yeah, this ain't working. But
I think for Walker, he's been, confronted with over the last few years the amount of vitriol that has been directed towards his dad, and not all of which is unfounded. Like, let's be very clear. Some of it a little bit extreme. I've seen some of the things that you lunatics post on Reddit. But he has seen that, and he has been watching this entire time as the Rockies have become more and more of just the rock bottom of the league.
Mm.
And so far, and I recognize it has only been a few months, he is walking the walk, so to speak. He is backing up his words. He's doing what he said. Because how many times before have the Rockies gone, we're going to do this, and they don't do it?
Mm-hmm.
When Bill Schmidt...
We're going to conduct an external hire for a general manager after the 2021 season.
Surprised it's Bill Schmidt anyway.
The right answer was right down the hallway.
And so far, at the very least, all we can tell is they are looking from outside the organization. They are looking to do new things and try new things. And that is what we want. We want to avoid the classic pratfalls of Rockies baseball. And that's why, and this will lead us into our nice segment of, guys like Mark Kisla, who are asking for the Rockies to do essentially the opposite. And it's like, why would you ask for that?
Yeah. No, instead of, because I can see where, because if he wrote in a little like a mailbag type thing, you can go find, Google it and whatnot. But I can understand he kind of makes the comparison that, the Rockies, these GMs are kind of like echoes of stuff they've already had of, a smart guy who went to Yale and, James Click. Oh, he's like Jeff Bridich. Or Scott Sharp, who is analytics-driven type person, or a former scout like Bill Schmidt. And then the other guy who's a journalist who's way too into analytics, and that's bad type thing. I can understand, like, it's easy to make those comparisons, but guess what? These guys are across the league, and those teams have had success.
Yeah. The majority of front office executives, and so yeah, this was Mark Kisla did a mailbag for the Denver Gazette, basically saying, we need to do all of this, but we also shouldn't be, we shouldn't look for people who have no experience at elevation. And a big thing he does is he says we should get a former player, a former Rockies player. And the thing is, and he goes on and on. He says multiple times about, guys being too into analytics. But the thing is, those are all things that the Rockies are already infamous for.
Yeah.
Of, what did Dig Monfort say at the beginning of the season a couple of years ago? Of saying, we need guys who, it only works if we have guys who know baseball at altitude, because otherwise they just don't get it. Because we've tried that and we know it wouldn't work. And the insularity, the loyalty, the failure to modernize is everything that has plagued this organization and got us to the point where we are before. And the majority of executives, front office or otherwise, across the league are not former players.
Yeah.
There are some. And there are some who've been pretty good at it. But none of them who went straight from the field to being a GM or being a PBO. Everybody, he mentions a couple different guys, but
Buster
almost
Posey, Chris Young
especially, these are people who spent several years in or around the front office before they took on that role.
Yeah.
And who would you name? What former Rockies player would you make the GM? You're going to go ask Charlie Blackmon?
Yeah. Exactly. And that's the thing is, and fans do that too. And, just plug that guy in as manager. It just doesn't work like that all the time. Todd Helton, I don't ever see him like being a GM or president of baseball ops, like a Joe Sakic became for the Avalanche.
Often, those moves that they end up creating these good old boys clubs, and we've seen in other sports, especially hockey. Hockey has been very bad, where they put former players into these front office positions, and it just becomes this good old boys club, and it's to the detriment of the team.
Yeah.
Joe Sakic and the success that he has found as he's not technically the general manager anymore, but he's the head of hockey operations for the Avs, is a statistical anomaly.
Yeah.
When it comes to this kind of thing.
Yeah, because look what John Elway did with the Broncos. Some good stuff in there, but ultimately, some of the moves Elway made didn't exactly help the team out very much.
Ironically, the thing that he knew the most about, quarterbacking, was his least strong suit.
Yeah. Should have taken Josh Allen. Then Haley Steinfeld would have been a Broncos fan. But yeah.
I don't know who Haley Steinfeld is. Should I know who that is?
She's Kate Bishop in Hawkeye.
Oh, okay.
She voices Gwen in Into the Spider-Verse.
Oh, yeah, that'd be neat.
She's also a pop star. She was the little girl in True Grit, the Jeff Bridges one.
Cool.
There we go. Yeah, but kind of round this out. Yeah, it's not there's no easy answer for all this. And especially when I think of sticking a Rockies player in there, it would have to be a Rockies player that wasn't here for very long, had success, and then went somewhere else.
Yeah.
And learned a ton, and then comes back.
And probably the only guy that I can think of who'd be even close to maybe eventually being able to be in a front office role is Scott Oberg.
Yeah.
Who's been, around the scouting and strategy stuff now for a couple years since his retirement. But the last thing I want to say is that, he brings up, shades of Jeff Bridich. Jeff Bridich was not a failure of a general manager because he went to an Ivy League school. He was a bad general manager because, and if you'll pardon my language here, he was an asshole. Infamously, very abrasive, feuded with the players, feuded with other people in the front office, and also, he just wasn't particularly good at his job, but just because this other guy also went to Yale or something doesn't mean that they are going to be the same person.
Didn't Jeff Bridich go to Harvard?
He went to one of those Ivy League schools.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, it's you can't let Jeff Bridich sour you from everybody that's ever gone to a Ivy League school. Because don't
let David Pumpkins ruin your night.
Because you look at a James Click. Look at his track record of working in the Astros organization. Was GM when they won that World Series during his tenure, and then he left because the owner only offered him a 1-year deal. And he left and then went to Toronto, where, okay, look where Toronto is right now and how the success they've had and what they've done as an organization. Okay, like Jeff Bridich was a guy who came up in the Rockies organizational ladder from player development into then the GM. Had no people skills, had no social, no, didn't know how to work with people very well. It's my way or the highway. I'm the smartest man in the room. Not everybody's like that. And no, from what we're seeing, James Click or any of these other guys don't strike me as those types of guys. So
I hope not, at least.
Yeah, we hope not. But it's. I think the only thing that we'd say, and it's, have they had enough time to make a proper decision? I don't know.
I think we'll never know.
Yeah, we'll never know.
But you've at least got to try.
Yeah. Because you just got to try something new. Yes, he did go to Harvard. Jeff Bridich did. So yeah, that's it right there. He's not one of those Yale boys. He went to Harvard. Yes. It's not rocket science or brain surgery. Yeah.
Old chum.
Yes. Hey, Bob. But yeah, we'll see. But it's stuff. Hopefully, maybe we'll have news by the time we convene once again next week, Evan.
We shall see.
And I will let you all know what my first move as general manager will be.
Give me a job.
That can be maybe the fifth thing I do.
Okay.
Also, real quick, Evan, before I know we're going to take a break here real quick, but I had this thought the other day when it comes to managers and whatnot. Michael Kadire strikes me as somebody who would be a really good manager for the Rockies. He could do magic tricks in the clubhouse.
Wasn't Cuddy working with Team USA in a coaching capacity?
I believe he's still the manager of Team USA for like the 18U.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I was thinking about him recently when I was writing my last week article for Purple Row, and he just came to mind as somebody who, man, I'd love Cuddy to come back. He'd be good.
It'd be interesting to say the least.
Yeah, I hope Cuddy becomes a big league manager somewhere, or like a hitting coach, or just a coach in general somewhere.
I'm really curious to see how Tony Wolters develops as a coach.
There you go. They announced him as the next bullpen coach?
Or something. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. But, yeah, I just had that on mind. I'll start a campaign for Cuddy as my buddy. Cuddy as a coach. Coach Cuddy.
Cuddy to the chase.
Mm-hmm. Cuddy to the chase. The Honey Badger, as Jenny Kavanaugh kept calling him for some reason. But, yeah. Anyway, that's my little thought. We'll take a break here. When we come back, it's more playoff time. Yay! Don't go anywhere. Welcome back here to Affected by Altitude. Again, if you haven't been watching the video version, guess what uniform Evan's wearing? It's the Mariners. He's wearing the Mariners gear.
I'm wearing my teal Ichiro jersey and my favorite Mariners hat.
There you go. Do the other hats know that it's your favorite?
I hope so.
The hats have feelings too, Evan.
It's important to assert dominance and make sure your favorite child knows that they are the favorite child.
Yeah. As we record, it is the continuation of the ALCS. It is currently entering Game 6 back in Toronto because the Seattle Mariners and the Toronto Blue Jays, Mariners are up 3-2 in the series. As we're recording, we will know more tonight as the game is happening before we record, or happening after we record, so right out. But Evan, it's been a pretty good series in the ALCS.
Yeah, the Mariners and Tigers in the ALDS was a really good series overall, and this one has been really interesting. It's been sort of a big trade of blows. It's been like a heavyweight bout between, two kind of more underdog teams. One more so than the other. The Mariners are much more the scrappy underdog than the relatively affluent Toronto Blue Jays. But these are both teams that are pushing for their first playoff success in quite some time. For the Mariners, much more so. But the Mariners win the first two games, and then the Blue Jays come roaring back, and they dominated games 3 and 4. And then you come back and you've got a 2-2 tie, and the Mariners, it looks like they're dead in the water, and all of a sudden they roar back to life. You've got multiple home runs. You've got a Eugenio Suarez grand slam, and all of a sudden the Mariners are a win away from their first ever World Series.
Yeah.
And the crowds at both of these stadiums, both in Toronto and in Seattle, have been electric and emotional, and all I can think of is, my God, I wish that I could experience that as a Rockies fan again.
Yeah. No, both fan bases, I would say, are incredibly deserving. And so like you're happy with either one that goes to the World Series. Maybe one a little more than the other. Of course, you always have your favorite. But no, you're not upset if the Blue Jays go or if the Mariners go. Like either one, you're like, well deserved. They earn that. They deserve to be there. Again, because like you said, it's these dedicated fan bases who've been deprived of this sort of thing for years upon years, and like years of disappointment, falling short, all this stuff. And so for this to be a year that both of them are having the kind of year and have this chance, it's awesome. And you're really happy for them. It's fun. And the heroes have gotten to like have their moments of like, oh, Cal Raleigh hits a crucial home run. Eugenio Suarez hits that grand slam. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has been lighting the world on fire for the Blue Jays in the playoffs. Like, man, Vladdy Jr. has been excellent.
He hits the ball very hard. That's pretty cool.
Man.
And you just, it's crazy to me because it's 100% the American League is where the true emotions lie. If you're looking for emotions, if you're looking for feel good, you've got a team in Toronto that hasn't been to the World Series since they won it in 1993. That very famous World Series victory. And then you've got the Seattle Mariners who have been such a long-suffering franchise of being totally miserable. And if you've never watched the John Boys documentary of the history of the Seattle Mariners, do so. It is well worth the time commitment. It is so good. And it really shows you, it's been a rough go for baseball. They've got, very similar to the Rockies. They've had their standout guys. They've had their Hall of Famers. They've had Ichiro and Randy Johnson and Edgar Martinez. But very little to show for it.
Yeah.
And they're so deserving of where they're at right now, even if they don't make it to the World Series, something they can be astronomically proud of because they just won their division for the first time in 24 years. They're in the championship series for the first time in 24 years. They're on the cusp of going to the World Series for the first time in franchise history. And it's great. And to watch the fans in Seattle get to enjoy this moment is awesome.
Yeah. You're watching your friend crawl up out of the trenches and move on. You're like, heck yeah, brother. So it's fun to watch for both those teams. And I think it's safe to say we'll be rooting for whatever American League team goes on, because the National League, surprise, surprise, it's the Dodgers, those long-suffering Dodgers. Yay.
Oh, what scrappy underdogs they are.
It's so hard being rich.
And I will point out before we start bashing on the Dodgers, yes, Shohei Ohtani's Game 4 in that series was one of the single greatest performances any of us have ever seen.
Yeah,
he is a demigod walking among mere mortals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's less like we've always talked about before. Like it's hard to there's not many Dodgers like players themselves that you hate, because it's like you can't hate on Shohei or like Mookie or Freddie. A bunch of these guys, Max Muncy, I can hate on.
I don't know. See, I kind of like him a little bit more now that he wears glasses. just
No.
because I've always got a soft spot for guys who wear the rec specs.
But it's just the organization as a whole is what we really hate. It just, it's because they've got all the money in the world, and it just never feels like they've, like we were talking about with the Blue Jays and Mariners. They've earned this moment. Both of them have earned a trip. For the Dodgers, it doesn't feel like they ever earn it.
It's for them. It feels like, I mean, they barely celebrated after clinching the pennant.
Yeah.
And it's like it's business for them. And I went on a little bit of a tirade the other day because I was like, the Dodgers are like Wendy's, or like when another big corporation tweets and tries to go, look at us, we're cool too.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they are corporate and sterile and kind of cold and just,
because they've
honestly, they're thoroughly unlikable as an organization. Like, yes, Freddie Freeman is cool, and Shohei Ohtani is cool, and all these are great. It's the organization as a whole. It's an embarrassment of riches, always getting richer, and I admit I'm mad at the Milwaukee Brewers having such a great regular season and making it all the way to the NLCS, where they promptly just laid down and died to the Dodgers. They put up no fight, no resistance.
They got tackled by Warming Bernabel, but did not resurrect like Juan Mejia did.
And it sucks because it's not fun. And like, yeah, for Dodgers fans, great. Your team's in the World Series again. They're probably going to win it again. But for everyone else, it's not particularly fun. And also, it continues to raise the specter of just how bad this 2027 lockout's going to be.
Yeah.
It's going to be ugly.
Yeah, it's like the Dodgers have turned, and no, this is a point that all teams would want to do, where winning is just so routine. It's become formulaic for the Dodgers. Oh, how do we win? Well, we just spend more and buy all the good players. Okay, yeah, that's an easy recipe, but nobody else can do it because they don't have the resources they do.
Yeah, and we talked about it a little earlier. You know, the Dodgers, they spend 73 to 75% of their overall revenue on reinvesting in the player. Awesome. But that 73 to 75% of revenue is higher than the 100% revenue that pretty much every other team makes.
Yeah.
And they've got contracts of their team that are worth almost as much in their entirety as another organization. The Rockies' last valuation was $1.4 billion. The Dodgers have a player whose overall contract with deferrals is half of that.
Yeah.
Other teams simply, yes, some of the methodology other teams can do. They can defer contracts. They can try and woo the international market. They can do that stuff. But no other team, except for maybe the Mets, has the resources to do it the way that the Dodgers do it. They just don't.
Yeah.
So, like, yes, the Rockies can defer payments and they can try and sign cool people from other countries and do all this other stuff. But they're never going to be able to afford to defer $700 million. They're never going to afford to be able to defer. Dodgers had what, like $1.2 billion in deferred payments
Pretty much.
Contracts? That's almost the entire net valuation of the Colorado Rockies as a franchise. It's just not something they can do.
Yeah. And it's just the way they operated this year because, now somehow all of their pitchers were injured and hurt so much throughout this year, and yet every single one of them is 100% healthy and incredibly effective in the postseason. Because, like I said, good on them that winning has become so routine for them, that they've turned winning a World Series into a business where it's just routine for them. Oh, we're going to go win a bunch of games. We're going to win the division. We're going to make a deep playoff run, and we may or may not try to win we may or may not get close to win the World Series. And that's good for them that they've been able to do that. But like you said, it just sucks so much of the romance and beauty of baseball out of it. It's like, why did people not like the Yankees in the the late, in the 90s into the 2000s? It's because of the same thing.
Nobody actually likes the dynasty except for the fans of that specific team.
Exactly. We're all. Why do you think we all celebrated so much when the Eagles won the Super Bowl?
The first one, not the next one.
Well, whenever they've defeated the Chiefs.
I celebrated more when they defeated the Patriots.
But it's like when the Chiefs kept winning, they're there every year and they keep winning it or being there. It was the same with the Patriots, and the Patriots kept being there. You get sick of it. No, as much as you get sick of your team losing all the time, you also get really sick of the same team winning it all the time.
Yeah.
Ugh. It's like when growing up and playing Smash Bros with my brothers and kept losing, or in other games we'd play, I kept losing. But then the day, Evan, when it comes where I defeat them and I'm the dominant one, it's a great day. But yeah, like, it's something like the Dodgers players' fault. No, they're all really good players. It's the organization itself that we cannot stand. Also, their fans are a little much.
Yeah.
Some fans, not all fans, but there's a lot of them.
It's just, man, if you're a Dodgers fan and for whatever reason you're listening to this, look, I get it that you're happy and your team is the good team with the infinite resources and I admit it, they do everything right. They do player development right. They do drafting right. They do free agency right. They do trades right. They do everything right. And part of the reason why they can do everything right is because right now, compared to other teams, they have essentially infinite resources.
They got a lot of monies.
The Mariners don't have that. And that's what ultimately, it's the struggle that makes a team infinitely more likable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we'll see. But yeah, Dodgers sitting and waiting in the World Series. We'll face either the Blue Jays or the Mariners. I think that starts Friday. This coming Friday is the start of the World Series.
Yep, and so, we could potentially have the American League pennant winner tonight.
It's potential. Or the next day when you hear this. The world may never know until then. But yeah, fun times. Good old playoffs. Stupid Dodgers. I hope they choke. Or I hope MLB hasn't rigged it so they could get Kershaw one last ring. We'll just sit here in sadness for the next 3 minutes to get this episode to an hour.
Yeah.
Just occasional sighs. But we'll see what happens. And hey, Evan, if they don't win the World Series, if the Dodgers lose it, they can just go out and buy Kyle Tucker just for the fun of it to make them feel better.
Oh, what was that? We had one position group that was just kind of okay at best. Let's throw $400 million at it.
Yeah. We'll see, Evan, because they only threw like 13, 15 million dollars at Michael Conforto, and it didn't work out, so you got to spend more.
Only.
But either way, the players themselves have earned their way. The organization, no. If you could divorce the two, which you can, but ugh, I'm sick of it.
Aren't we all?
Can Shohei Ohtani be bad at something?
No, apparently not.
Oh well. 'Tis just a game.
At the end of the day.
It's true. Well, Evan, I think that'll bring this episode to a close. We'll talk more about stuff next week. We'll see what happens by the end of this week, if there's any Rockies news. Or we'll just hear more about the finalists, and then they'll make a decision by the end of the week after, when the World Series gets close to ending. So stay tuned. Keep watching the skis. Evan, where can the folks find you?
You can find me over on Blue Sky at evanlang27.bsky.social. I would love to hear from you. You can also check out my work over on Purple Road, www.purpleroad.com, doing the Monday Rock Piles and the weekly Pebble Reports, which will be continuing for as long as the Arizona Fall League is in action. It's been a lot of fun so far. Jared Thomas and Charlie Condon both having pretty good performances so far. Remember that you can catch Rocky Mountain Rooftop on all of your favorite podcasting platforms of choice, be that Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. You can catch the video version on YouTube. And remember that you can find Rocky Mountain Rooftop on most social media platforms, including the video version on YouTube at Rocky Mountain Rooftop. That's at ROCKYMTN Rooftop.
Find me over on Twitter at Skyler Timmons or over on Blue Sky, STimmons13. WSKY.social. Broncos are losing 13-0 as they get ready to head into halftime. But, and you find me over Wednesday Rock Piles at Purple Row, and then Brighton covering Avalanche, Nuggets, Broncos, Rockies over at fansfirstsportsnetwork.com, which is FFSN.com. I have to say it slower, otherwise I get jumbled up. But that'll do it for this one.
FFSFN.
FFSN. I always feel like I'm saying too many Fs.
The way you said it sounded like you were saying the word effervescent.
Wake me up. That's Evanescence.
I can't wake up.
Wake me up inside.
Wake me up before you go. Still the best version of that song.
Yuck.
Mickey.
Gosh. I did it. But fun stuff. Until next time, I'm Skyler. That's Evan. Thank you,
Mariners.
Thank you for watching or listening to Affected by Altitude. Be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube or follow us on your favorite podcasting platforms. And hey, if there's a place to leave a review, leave us a 5-star review. No less than 3.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be nice. We always forget to plug that, but do that if you can leave a review somewhere on like iTunes or Spotify or wherever else. Love to hear from you. We may never respond, but we do read them and see what people comment and whatnot. But until next time, farewell! This has been Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast with Rocky Mountain Rooftop, a proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. Catch new episodes every Monday on wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Be sure to follow us on YouTube as well for video versions of the show.